Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times to discuss movies and horror. And today I bring you a review from a movie that came out a couple months ago and I had been waiting to finally watch it, and that is There is Something Wrong with the Children.
It's coffee time!
When this movie was announced, I was kind of excited. I loved the poster, the concept. I was intrigued. I wanted to know, and I finally got access to the film here, watched it, and I'm here with thoughts. I know this has been a movie that was a little bit disappointing for a lot of people, so let's see what I thought about it. As always, spoiler free. It is an American horror movie directed by Roseanne Benjamin, and it did come out in the US on the 17th of January 2023. Now I finally got access to it, and I gotta admit that I did go into this movie with a little bit of expectations. I would like to say I was expecting a certain type of film based on the poster and the trailer that I had seen, and it is time to dive into the film now, discuss it and talk about if it met my expectations, and let's get into it. Margaret and Ben take a weekend trip with two longtime friends and their two young children. Ben soon suspects something sinister is afoot when the kids start behaving strangely after disappearing into the woods overnight. There's Something Wrong with the Children takes place in two cabins in the middle of the woods. We have two couples. One of them doesn't have any children and the other one has two kids, so they decide to get some time together to talk, catch up with life, because as we know, once you have kids you don't have as much time for your friendships as you normally would have, and we are now having here a juxtaposition of two very different types of families. We have a couple that has been together for a very long time but hasn't had kids, and so they are still discussing if it makes sense for them in their life and what they want in life to have children or not, especially because Ben has been struggling with mental health and it's just now recovered. The other couple has two kids and they say that yeah, it is a lot of work, but they are the best thing that happened to them, and they do admit that since having kids they don't have so much time for social gatherings and other things, and they've been a lot more focused on that family with kids. So I did like that a horror movie kind of dived a little bit deeper into the question of do you want to have children or not, because we all know that especially women have an expiration date. It is what it is, and so it kind of brings up that question, and I love to see that explored a little bit in the movie, because like I said, it's not something that it's explored a lot in movies in general, and especially not in horror. So at the beginning of the film, when the characters were being introduced, I was getting excited at a possible kind of deeper meaning of the movie. The setting is also perfect for horror as well as a drama. We have isolated cabins in the middle of the woods. We have two families that are cut off from civilization and that are spending the night in the middle of nowhere. They are exploring the kind of surroundings, the woods, the caves and everything around, and it is in one of those expeditions where they discover a very interesting cave, and we all know the moment they get there that it's gonna have something relevant to the story. But I do have to say that even though I did enjoy the concept that they had for these two families and I did enjoy the characters themselves, I felt like the acting was not the strongest suit of this movie, especially when it comes to the children. But in general, the characters felt a little bit like forced awkward relationships, and they are supposed to be best friends. And yeah, like I said, the children were also not the best. So that did bother me a little bit. The movie starts with a very clear kind of 80s vibe when the credits are rolling at the beginning and the song that is playing. And the soundtrack was interesting because they were using this kind of old school 80s really strong soundtrack that didn't quite work. It was a little bit off-putting at times, and I get that they were trying to let you know that even though we have these friends trying to bond and having a good time and drinking by the fire and kids playing, that there was something sinister that was gonna happen. So they were trying to bring this atmospheric music to the movie, and I just feel like at times it was overtaking the scene, and not in a good way. As the title is telling us, there is something wrong with the children. So Lucy and Spencer are the two kids, and they disappear one night. They reappear as if nothing would have happened to them, but they start to act weird. And funny enough, it's only one of the main characters, one of the adults, Benjamin, that realizes that the kids are acting really weird. And here's something that I really appreciated about the movie, because there's also always positives. So Benjamin is a character that is trying to tell everybody, hey, look, there's something wrong with these kids. And nobody believes him. Normally, the trope in horror movies as well is that the kids are trying to tell the adults that there is something going on, something supernatural, something scary, some killer, and nobody believes the kids. In this case, we have an adult and nobody believes him. So I like that they kind of turn the tables here, and I enjoy that part, but it was very brief, and I didn't feel like the character of Ben got the justice he deserves when it comes to his character arc. But I did like that the adults are starting to kind of not trust each other. There is this tension between them. So I was kind of enjoying this kind of setup, but I feel like when the movie reached that midpoint, that's when it started losing me a little bit. The images were very colorful. They were blood reds and evergreen forestation. It was creating this kind of almost like pop feeling. Even in darker sequences, when we are in the caverns, we could be able to see some shadows. So I did really like the aesthetics that the movie had and some of the visuals. But the camera work, I feel like they were trying to use a lot of tropes from other horror movies on the way that they were using the cameras, and it didn't always fit the movie. Like, I get that you probably have seen all the horror movies as a director and you have certain scenes in your mind that you love and you would like to replicate something like that, but it also needs to fit the type of film that you're doing. And I feel like they just created a mashup of tropes from other horror movies and they just dumped them in this movie, even though they didn't quite fit the important part of the story. Now let's talk about the horror. Now, this movie was not as extreme as I would have hoped, but we do have a fair amount of violence, and it is all being set up kind of slowly, and it is really the third act where things escalate and the characters have been pushed to their limits, to the point where they are fighting for survival, and that's where all the nice blood happens. I think they were trying to make a horror movie, but they focused so much on the drama aspects of this meeting and of these characters and all the things they're going through that they forgot that they were doing a horror movie, and it kind of backfired. I didn't feel this movie was scary, unsettling, or anything like that. I think part of that is as well that when they were doing like shots, like close-up shots from the kids and the way they were looking or smiling, it didn't really work. So it was more awkward than horrifying. I know that this was a low budget movie, so I know they couldn't go all out when it comes to the gore and the blood, but that does not mean that they could not have been perhaps a little bit more creative, or that they could not have delivered a spookier, more unsettling film. In order to create fear, you don't really have to give blood and gore. That's completely different, but the purpose of the movie was to make, I believe, the viewer really unsettled about the kids and uneasy when they were on screen. That didn't work. And so at the end of the day, you had a movie that didn't quite develop all that drama and the more in-depth topics that they were trying to portray, but also then the horror didn't work. So it ended up being a little bit of a messy movie. And to be honest, this is not a spoiler and the movie has been out for a while, but I will tell you that the horror in the movie is never really explained. So it's really unfulfilling, and when you get to the ending, you feel cheated. You feel like you've made it this far and now you don't even get like a resolution in a way. I'm not talking here about open or closed endings or stuff like that. That's, you know, something that you might love or hate, but I feel like the horror was never really explained in any way, sort of form, and that was quite upsetting as a viewer, that you never got like a proper explanation of anything really. And again, I'm not saying I need the director to explain to me absolutely every single detail of what's going on and take me by the hand and show me everything. I just mean like there is no explanation for whatever's going on in this film. At the end of the day, I could only give this movie a 2 out of 5, and I would say watch it at your own risk. Because, you know, I understand why people find kids the perfect kind of vessel for portraying horror, because they are these special creatures that say things and do things that sometimes we don't understand. They are these innocent, naive creatures, and they can be quite unsettling. Also, kids sometimes don't always comprehend yet the meaning of right and wrong or what morals are, and so they are perfect for horror movies, and sometimes it works really well. As I've mentioned, I do love what they were going for when it comes to a concept. I think they had a great idea and something that was a little bit new, but they just didn't know how to execute it, and they just relayed in so many horror tropes, and it ended up being a movie without a real purpose. I feel like they lost themselves a little bit. So I feel like if you want to watch it as a casual watch, you can go ahead, but it is a little bit of a forgettable movie. And again, I'm really kind of annoyed that it didn't work, because I was excited about the concept. At the beginning of the movie, I was still engaged and I was still excited to see what it had to offer, but it ended up being quite a disappointment for me. Alright you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this spoiler-free review. Let me know down below if you've watched the movie and what you thought of it. And also let me know down below which is your favorite horror movie that includes creepy children. Thank you guys as always so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in our next coffee time. Bye!